You just go by journalist.
Huh?
Journalist, that's your title?
Yeah, my official CNN title is Chief Congressional Correspondent.
Let's say that then.
Yes.
That's way more impressive. Welcome everybody to another episode of What Do You Bring to the Table? I am Rajiv Satyal, your host, and I have the privilege of sitting here with the chief congressional correspondent of the cable news network, better known as CNN, Manu Raju.
Thanks for having me.
How are you, man?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for coming by.
I love the setup.
I'm really, really grateful that you came while you're here in LA from DC. I lived in DC for a few months.
Yeah.
Do you love it?
I do love DC. You know, I've been there for 20 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Long time.
Long time, but you know, it's home. So I love it.
It's home.
Yeah.
It's great. It's the only part of the country I think where all like three different regions come together. Right? You have the Midwest, the South, and the East Coast. I don't think any other part of the country is like that.
And it's a very transient city. Typically, people come there for a couple of years and they leave, like you. And some, you know, a lot of my friends when I first moved to DC said, "We're leaving. You're not going to stay in DC, are you?" And then I'm 20 years later. I'm
Half
still
your
here.
life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's crazy. And it's a good place to raise a family. You're happy there and
Yeah,
all
I
that?
got 2 kids, twins, almost 7. My wife Archana and I, we love it. It's fun. Lots
great.
of stuff to do.
Yeah, they're
keep
really
busy.
Yeah, you're like, you know, there are very few cities where you feel like you're on the grid where things are happening. And, you know, LA, DC, these are 2 of those cities for sure.
Absolutely, and the kids are totally, you know, you can already feeling and understanding what's happening in culture and politics at that young age, and it's a lot to do with where we live and what we do. So
Do they watch you on TV?
they do, but they're not that impressed.
What do any dads have to do for their sons to be, or their kids to be impressed?
Yeah, they're like, yeah, okay. What else? What else is on?
What else is on?
Or doing whatever else, playing with whatever they're doing.
Sure.
So yeah, they're not too interested.
Yeah, even comedians, you hear that from George Carlin used to say that too. Yeah, my daughter's not that impressed. You're like, really? Jerry Seinfeld was saying that too. You're just like, yeah, we just don't really.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you have to do?
Maybe,
Go walk on the moon?
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
I don't even that would not be good.
No, like, do you actually want to be an astronaut? No. I just like to pretend to be an astronaut.
Like, all right, yeah, I don't want to watch the moon. The takeoff.
What's the, describe the 30 seconds right before you go on air, because you're live a lot.
Yeah, I am. And look, when I'm about to go on air, I typically have several things that I want to hit in a live show. Because I basically have 90 seconds to 2 minutes to tell the viewers what the news is, what's going on, the top lines of what's happening. And sometimes there's a sound bite that I have to toss to, and I will have already planned which sound bite to toss to for an interview that I did with a member of Congress. So I will have that in my mind. This is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to say when I toss to the sound bite. This is what I'm going to tag it with, and then end it and toss it back to the anchor. So you kind of have to have that structure in your mind. And do it concisely, and try not to forget the news. Like, oh, I forgot to say that, because you don't want to forget to say important things.
The important thing, why they threw to you in the first place. Has that happened?
You know, probably. Not that there's nothing specific, you know, that I can recall, but, you know, but that's why I try to, you know, really think clearly what I'm going to say. The worst thing you could do, in which I've learned, is that, like, you can't go not prepared. You have to be ready to say something on TV.
Sure.
Because the camera's rolling whether you're ready or not.
Yeah, that's true. I think Lorne Michaels, of course, has run SNL for a long time. He was famous for saying, we're not ready, it's just time.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, there's like, it's Saturday at 11:30 p.m., we're going. I mean, that's what happens.
Sink or swim.
Sink or swim. Now, do you get a lot of static on social media or in real life? You know, the mainstream media has been under so much attack.
Yeah.
Do you feel that? Is that something that, I mean, I remember the liberal hack business that happened and all these things that blew up.
So people do attack you constantly. It's probably healthier not to read the comments coming at
Twitter.
you via Twitter and Facebook and social media. You know, you get a lot of nasty things, racist slurs come your way, and you know, I tune out the noise. You know, I mean, there's a lot of vitriol. It's gotten worse over the years.
Sure.
But you know, you just have to just not let it bother you because that's just a distraction. Your job is to figure out what's important, what people don't know, and report that.
Right.
Not listen to the noise.
Yeah, signal from noise.
Yeah.
What's the pie chart of bad stuff? How much of it is racism? How much of it is, because we're men of color, so how much of it is that versus other things, or?
That's a hard.
You're like, I'm trying not to look at it.
No, I do look at it because even though my lovely wife Archana doesn't want to look at it because it gets her very upset.
I'm sure it probably does.
But me, I just kind of want to know what people are saying.
Sure. You're a journalist, so you're curious.
Yeah, I'm curious.
And you have to keep it's a two-way communication.
And I don't respond to the really racist, nasty
stuff.
So, but what percentage of it is racist? A quarter of it maybe.
Okay.
Sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on the time. And a lot of it. The amazing thing is though, this is all over social media, right?
Yeah.
People don't come up to your face and say that stuff. When people come up to me on the street, people are very nice. They say very nice things. They often say, thank you for your work, or like you do a great job, or or do I know you from somewhere?
Right.
How do I know you? Or they'll say, oh man, you're so good, Sanjay Gupta. You're so good at your job. And I politely say that I'm not Sanjay Gupta.
Oh, do you? Okay.
But that happens to everyone. Not so, a little bit. It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people are very kind in public to your face.
If they were mean in my face and thought I was Sanjay Gupta, I would correct them. But if they were nice, I'd be like, thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Take the compliment.
Hey, why not?
I really killed that. You didn't know that medical advice.
That's right.
That's great.
And Sanjay Gupta's great. So
we've confirmed him for the show. So
excellent.
That would be awesome. Yeah, that'd be really great to see. And I watched it's the only Joe Rogan episode I've ever watched, but I watched all 3 hours of him on Joe Rogan's show, and he was quite open. I was very surprised.
Yeah, he did a lot of it, and CNN played it up too.
Yeah, they did. It was good. It's cool that they leaned into it, because I think that's the new media landscape in which we find ourselves. So, when you think about this quote, the best paintings have already been painted. That's a quote that exists. The best paintings have already been painted. How do you feel about the field of journalism today? Do you feel like, when Walter Cronkite did it, it was better? Is it better now? Define better?
Well, obviously the media landscape is so much different than those days when you had 3 networks and everybody watched the evening news. People only got their information from the daily morning newspaper, and maybe there was an evening or afternoon edition, and that was pretty much it. Information traveled so slowly. Now we're in an age where instantly it's news. I could tweet something right now that's news, and we could drive the entire news cycle if big news came, because then it will get a ton of attention.
Well, you've done that. You've broken a couple of big stories like that.
Oh yeah. Whenever I have a big story, I will tweet it, and anytime I have any information, not big or little, or any new information, I'll tweet it, and it can get a lot of attention very quickly, and it immediately shape the news cycle.
Sure.
So obviously the news industry has changed so much. Has the best paintings ever already been painted? I don't think so, because we're giving the first draft of history, and the first draft of history obviously is going to change under any new information that you get. So there is so much good journalism that is happening, despite all the noise, despite all the criticism and attacks. Like, there's just good, factual, on the ground reporting that is essential, because people need to know what's going on in their lives, and without it, they wouldn't. So.
Who's doing this really great journalism where you go, wow, and where do you get your objective? If you're like, dude, no, I really need to know what's happening. Who's giving you this great dope?
So there are tons of really good reporters out there that are people who I very much value and listen to, and think that they really know what's going inside the room. I'll give you a few examples of people that I really respect and look up to. One of the guys, he's a longtime print reporter. His name is David Rogers. He was worked for the Wall Street Journal for many years. Then he covered Capitol Hill. Went to Politico, where I worked for 7 years. Longtime reporter. He's mostly retired now. Sometimes writes every once in a while. But a guy who just understood the process, the details, broke news, and just was dogged in his reporting. Right, like that is a classic shoe leather reporter. I really, really respect David Rogers. I really respect Maggie Haberman from the New York Times.
Sure.
I used to work with her.
The trunk whisperer.
Yeah, she knows.
But she's been there a long time.
She's been there a long time. I worked with her at Politico also, and she was excellent pen. She's a very good reporter.
Yeah. In comedy, beast is good.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, yes. that's a good term in comedy. So maybe
exactly.
Like, wow, he's a beast. That means a good thing.
Exactly. And look, I respect a lot of our foreign correspondents too. People like Clarissa Ward, who are in the middle of a war zone, reporting on what's happening and risking their own lives for us to understand what's happening. So that's what I really respect in the news business. And what I strive to do too is just try to get information, give something, a piece of a detail that you don't know about, nobody knows about, but helps shape the understanding of an issue, of a person, of a development, and so that helps you have a better understanding of something that will affect your life.
Sure. When you are consuming news, do you prefer to read it, listen to it, watch it? Is it
all of the above?
All of it?
I mean, because
you got to be a news junkie, I assume.
It was interesting because I used to subscribe to like multiple newspapers a day. And Archana would be see the piles of newspapers that would stack up on our coffee table. But as obviously things have shifted, I held on to getting my newspaper delivered for so long because I didn't want to see print go. I really love reading in print, but now I just consume everything digitally.
Sure.
Like everybody
My wife
else.
got her dad the New York Times, the paper, like last year.
Yeah, I mean it's
you can still do it.
Yes, you can still do it, and I love reading the paper when I can because you'll see stories that you would miss otherwise if you're leafing through social media or just going on the website and stuff, and you're like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I should pay attention to that. So when I can, I like to do that, but typically I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
The morning is hectic, it's busy, I'm trying to get moving for the day, I'm trying to understand what's going on, and I need to just make sure I'm read in, which means I'm reading a combination of newsletters about some of the news that's happening in the day, whether it's Playbook or Punch Bowl to get the political landscape to understand what's going on. I'll read other newsletters that are coming in. We have such an intense news gathering operation that in the morning people aggregate news to make sure we don't miss stuff. So I'll get read in on that, and I'll just go to some of the big websites and stuff to make sure I'm not missing the headlines. So that's kind of how I stay in touch of what's going on. So I'll be watching TV too. So it's all of it is coming in all directions, and you kind of just pick it up on the fly.
Do you have a lot of screens throughout your house?
No. I mean, we have enough.
Try to focus it?
Yeah,
okay.
But in my booth in the Senate where I work, I have 8 TV screens going at one time. So when I'm sitting in there, which is not very often, I'm usually running around the hallways. I come back and everything's on. So,
So you're there and you're looking into the camera and you're reporting. What are you picturing on the other side of that? Are you trying to talk to Archana? Are you trying to talk to a sea of people?
Yeah.
Or, what are you picturing there?
No, actually, I'm just picturing the anchor because I know typically you're looking at the camera. And there's nothing on the other side. I mean, there's a camera man who's there, who's operating the camera, and I have a producer who's standing over here too to make sure that everything is working and there's no issues. But when I'm speaking, I'm trying to speak to the anchor and also to the viewer, and trying to make sure that I'm explaining things clearly.
We interviewed Asha Rangappa, also at your network for quite a while, and she was pretty forthcoming about. We were talking about January 6th, and some shortcomings even on the left, and we're going to balance it out and talk to somebody on the right. But these discussions are difficult to have because it just feels like we're operating from a different set of facts.
Yeah.
And is that what you see? When did that? It's easy to say Donald Trump, but what do you think that splintering really did happen?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we have not seen that, this level of, two separate sets of facts being an issue here. Typically, we're arguing from the same set of facts, and the two sides are making their best arguments based off of those same set of facts.
Because that was Patrick Moynihan. Was he the one who said that you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts?
Exactly. But now apparently you are entitled to your own facts.
Well, everybody's entitled to everything now, so it's like whatever.
Exactly. And so I think that helps skew the perceptions of things. Like, I was in the Capitol on January 6th. It was not a regular tourist visit. It was not anything other than a violent, deadly, tragic attack on the United States Capitol as they're trying to deal with a peaceful transition of power. And,
we broke our streak. Like the United States, 240 years, and now we don't.
Yeah, and
that's significant.
It was stunning then, and it's stunning now. And the fact that there is an effort to recreate the basic facts of that day is at the point, immediately after that, it didn't feel like that this would also become politicized the way it has been.
Shocking.
Obviously has.
But if COVID is, right, and COVID is not a person, COVID is a bug, and if we couldn't get together on that, I think that was really the thing where you kind of go, man, like there's just nothing that we don't politicize. Our food is politicized, like where you eat, where you vacation. Like that's what fascism is, right? Like nothing exists outside of the state. I mean, I understand it's when corporations take over the government. I understand the definition, but it's also like there's just nothing that exists outside of the state. There's always this mentality of like, there's us and there's them.
Yeah.
And there's just no, so how do we put the genie back in the toothpaste tube?
So look, I don't have any magic, any answer to that. No magic answer. Exactly. I mean, the only thing I could say is that, like, from my perspective, what I have to just do is just be honest about what I know as a reporter, explain that when I have the facts, explain it without any passion, dispassionately, and just explain the significance of it and ensure that both sides, I get a chance to weigh in on the whatever new information I present and present it fairly. And assume viewers trust that set of facts, trust that set of information, because what we're doing is trying to present the truth. So, it's up to them on the other side of the, whether they're sitting at home and watching, to believe us or not. But it's up to me to just be fair, accurate, and make sure that it comes across that way too, and make sure my reporting is as sound as possible. And if we make a mistake, own up to it. And when we're correct on something, make sure that people understand that these are facts and this is true, and hopefully they believe us. Yeah,
I hope so. I mean, I think I'm a natural born optimist, and I grew up just Pollyannish optimistic, and I'm quite pessimistic now. I mean, like I'm a fully blown just doomsday, prophecist and all these sorts of things, because I just don't know, like, if you have a tool and you have a wrench and a hammer or whatever, and one's broken, you can use the other. But when all the tools are broken, what do you do? Like the criminal justice system is busted, the media is busted, no one trusts the government, no one trusts corporations, no one trusts their neighbors. It's almost to that point. Not quite to that point, but it sometimes feels like that. I mean, if they have a Biden sign or a Trump sign or something, that most people now treat you differently based on that. And they say that, it would be very hard for you to wear a Biden shirt at a NASCAR rally and wear a Trump hat on the New York subway.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true.
Right.
Which one would scare you more?
I mean, neither scare me because I see both.
Yeah.
I mean,
you live in it.
I live in both. I mean, I talk to people on both sides. I go to rallies in both on the left and the right. I'm in the campaign trail. I'm interviewing people all day long at both. And I think part of what's good about what I appreciate about my job is that I'm one of the few people who will actively seek out and listen to both sides.
Sure.
Because these days, as you mentioned, people go to their silos.
Yeah.
People don't listen to the other side. My job is to listen to both sides and evaluate what is new, what is information, what is news, what they're saying, what they're arguing, and tell people what they're saying, what they're arguing. So, it is, in that way, it allows me to be, people say, how are you objective? How can you be objective?
Right.
That's how I do it. It's just because I listen to both sides. Doesn't mean that I don't one side may be making an argument that doesn't make any sense, or that side, whatever. That's not my job to tell you if their argument makes sense. That's a person on the opinion side to make that argument. My job is to tell you what they're saying.
Right.
And hear out what they're saying and present what they're saying.
So from that standpoint, it's I don't want to say easy, but you're right. It's like you're trying not to put your spin on it. You're saying, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then that's when reporters like me also get criticized. It's like, well, why are you saying that? They're obviously not true. And obviously when we report something that someone's saying, something that's totally, without basis in fact, we report the context around it. When Trump is saying the election was stolen,
right,
we call it what it is, completely false, a lie. It was not rigged. It was not stolen.
Sure.
Like there have been numerous investigations that have shown that in these key battleground states, it was not stolen. It was not.
Yeah,
rigged.
even Arizona, it was like their own side ran the analysis, and
exactly. And courts never held up any of this stuff. So we present it, but we still have to report what they're saying, because I'm not gonna. It's even worse for me if I didn't. I get sometimes attacked on Twitter. Like, why are you repeating what Trump is saying? It's like, well,
Because that's what he's saying.
And we should know what the former president is saying.
Sure.
And I can also report what he's also saying was not true about that specific subject. He's talking about the election or whatever. But, it's not my job to opine on what he's saying. My job is to tell you what he's saying and then present the context and facts around it.
How many Trump rallies have you been to?
I've only, been to a couple because this was back in 2016.
Sure.
Because I, during
you're on the Congress side first.
Yeah, because I cover Capitol Hill, and I go to, and during election season, I typically am covering House and Senate races, particularly Senate races. So I've been, so I go to like Republican events.
Sure.
But Trump rallies themselves, not as many as some of my colleagues.
Are they scary?
No, I mean, I never was scared at them. I mean, I've heard that people have, getting a lot of vitriol directed towards them. Some of the, supporters going after reporters and targeting them because Trump points out the reporters
he literally
in the back,
pointed them out.
and it's there's security around reporters and stuff too, and it shouldn't be that way.
No,
we shouldn't be that way at all.
Yeah.
So, but I think, I don't feel like my personal safety is...
You have never felt that?
Not really. No, I don't think so.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel generally, maybe I'm being naive.
No,
but,
I doubt that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what you're up against.
Yeah, and look, when I go into the States and I go in and go to Republican events and talk to Republicans, most are very nice. I was just up in northern Wisconsin, a very conservative area, and people are very polite up there. And sometimes you run into hostility, and then if people want to be mean and say some nasty stuff to you, okay, I'm not going to engage with them, and I'll kind of move on. So it just, but for the most part, it goes back to what I was initially saying. Most people are pretty friendly when you talk to them. When they're hiding behind anonymity, it's different. So.
Do you feel differently about people in general, Americans in general, after everything that we've been through?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that we have gotten, more polarized for the last, 6 years. And I never thought I would say that because I felt like we were really polarized.
Before. Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. For me, it started during Bill Clinton's time where, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. It's pretty conservative. It's a pretty conservative area. But they just would not give him any break. And I'm like, wow, they really hate him,
Yeah.
But then it just, it escalated and the left really hated George W.
Yeah,
Bush.
and look, and I kind of feel like, one thing that is discouraging and sitting in my perch and covering American politics is just seeing how it's devolved, and each cycle kind of devolves into a new low, it seems, and each party takes the bad habits of the previous majority and tries to one-up them.
Top them or bottom them. Yeah,
exactly. And so it gets worse and worse and worse.
So where are we headed?
Yeah, I mean I knew you were going to ask that.
I'm sure everybody's asking you that.
So,
it's my favorite question always to ask, even before all of this stuff. I love to talk about the future. I love to go, okay, so what's going to happen? Of course, it's a prediction we don't know. No one knows. Yeah. But where are we headed?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a very tumultuous time. I think it's very uncertain where our politics will go, where the world events will go, what will happen Russia versus Ukraine, what will happen, with China get involved in any serious, meaningful way. There's uncertainty
with Taiwan
North Korea.
Or anything,
Exactly. Or even in, side with Russia. And perhaps, who knows if that ever ends up in that direction. And so does this escalate to a bigger global conflict?
How do you raise kids during this time? You have kids. I'm a new father. Honestly, really speaking, and Hersha, my wife, will always say, you're on crack. This was never going to be the plan. But she won't say I'm on crack. But she'll say, we didn't decide to have Naveen, our child, until after the 2020 election. I'm like, if he wins again, I'm not having kids. And she's like, you're crazy. That's insane. And a lot of people think I'm insane for that. But I was serious. And I was like, I'm glad we waited. She's like, I'm glad you think we waited. That was not anything. I was never on board with you on that boat with you. But I do worry about this. Like, how do we? And your kids, you guys are right there in the vortex, in Mordor, as I call it. Where do we? How do you do it? How do you explain this?
Well,
and they're still young. I understand.
Yeah, they are paying attention and they listen, and I try to be very optimistic about where things are headed in our future. I don't try to present as
doom and gloom.
Because I think there is still, this is still a great country, and there's still so much opportunity, so many things they could do. And if they want to be president, they can be president. I try to tell them that I hope they don't go into politics. I really hope they don't.
My son doesn't go into comedy, so we have that in common.
I hope they become, like as any Indian dad would say, Dr. Engineer.
Surgeon General. Now the bar's much higher.
That's right.
Surgeon General.
Yeah, fine. Dr. Engineer is fine.
Yeah.
So, I'm very positive with that about stuff, try to keep a very optimistic outlook on life. And I do think that, there's this, we'll look back in this period and say, wow, that was some wild times that we went through. And
what gets us out of it?
I don't know. I just think that it's going to, I have no idea. Because I think that anything, I think the country's strong enough to withstand some intense pressures that we are facing. But how it happens, we'll see.
I hope you're right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm optimistic too.
You are quite optimistic. Yeah, I would say that. But you know what? They say that comes when you start raising your kids and they get older and whatever. Like you have no, one of my editors actually is a white guy from Ohio, but he goes, I have a political podcast that we're launching, and he said one thing you said that really resonates with me is, in Hinduism, there's Satyog, and that there are 4 cycles. Satyog is the best one, and Kali Yuga is the worst one. And we're in Kali Yuga, but it's easy to be good during Satyog because everything's good.
Yeah.
Like the real challenge is to be good during Kali Yuga. And so anybody can just throw up their hands and be like, well, this sucks and we're not going to make it.
Yeah,
but can you be a leader? Can you provide that light?
Yeah.
Can you illuminate and, go for light, not heat, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do.
Yes, I mean, there's another saying too, like the generals are made at a time of war, right? So when things are looking really bad, can rise to the occasion.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Ping pong?
Let's do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
All right,
Cool.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So, look, your brother, Sharith, is a successful filmmaker and director. Hey, we can count that right now. Part of the scenery, part of the set. And, he's doing really well out here in Hollywood, directing Fear the Walking Dead.
Yep.
We just had Karen David on the show, which is super fun too, and Bosch and some of the other TV you were telling us about, which we know. And you were saying you were never really bitten by the entertainment bug.
Yeah.
But you were business administration in college and then sports editor. If you didn't do your current job, what would you do?
Probably be the scoreboard operator at Wrigley Field. Yeah.
Awesome.
Manual scoreboard operator.
That's fantastic. What a great seat in the house, man.
Oh yeah, best seat in the house. Watch the game every day. Get to go to Wrigley every day. It's interesting because I didn't necessarily aspire to become a journalist. I went to, as you mentioned, I went to college, University of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I was interested in business. I pursued a business degree, and but I got involved in my student newspaper, and I like sports. I'm a huge sports fan.
Yeah.
I covered the sports team. A great year for 4 years of Wisconsin sports. 2 Rose Bowls, a Heisman Trophy winner Ron Dane, Final Four in basketball. And I decided I kind of like this journalism thing. So
sure.
By the time I graduated, I had a couple internships, including here at the NBC in Burbank here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the sports on the sports desk.
Very close.
And so by the time I was about to graduate, I said, maybe I should give this journalism thing a try.
Sure.
And then my parents had moved to DC, the DC area. I grew up in Chicago, and I decided to just move out to DC and look for a journalism job. And then I found my first job covering environmental policy for a trade publication. And then from there, I went to covering broader Congress for another Washington publication called Congressional Quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I got my congressional experience there, covering the Hill. And then from there, I went to the Hill newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
And a broader political reporting job covering Senate leadership. And then from there, I went to Politico to cover broader politics there, covering the Hill. And then 2015 came along, and a position opened up at CNN, and then they hired me. So I kind of took one group of experiences to form my next job, to lead me to my next job, that led me to my next job, to lead me to my next job. So, it's kind of where things headed. It wasn't necessarily something I aspired to as a kid, but it's where I ended up. So
yeah, that's amazing, because I think kids these days, or a lot of times, maybe not even just these days, you have a dream, and you try to pursue that. And I think a lot of people in Gen Z, especially, try to move really, really fast, and sometimes they're successful.
Yeah, that's one of the things I say. I gave the commencement address at the University of Wisconsin last winter.
Yeah, I read about that.
And I said to those kids, I said, look, you got to take a risk. You have to take a risk in life, and your first job might not be your best job, your end-all, be-all job, but it could lead you to your, where you want to be ultimately. So you shouldn't be afraid to fail, and you shouldn't be afraid to take a risk. So, and I think that's a good thing to live by.
That's a very good message. Because I mean, honestly, it's like when you were saying that about stuff, covering for a trade publication, and this is you said environmental. So I mean, that sounds very unglamorous. That sounds like a very, potentially boring job, right? Well, was it, or what did you find
it was very inside the beltway type stuff. Because I'm covering environmental regulatory issues. Basically, EPA rulemakings that come through the EPA against industry, and there are big fights between industry and environmentalists over those regulations. And my job was covering all the nuances of those regulations.
Sure.
And that is it can be very dry stuff, but it's super important.
Sure.
And the people who are following it very closely are people in Washington. The readers are your lobbyist type, government officials, people who are involved in that level of detailed and federal policy. And for me, it was a great education in journalism to learn how to understand what news is, and how to cover something that is kind of that is a bit that is very arcane, and explain it to people in a way that they understand.
Yeah, that's a skill.
In the way that I actually understand.
Sure, yeah.
You can't write something if you don't understand it.
Sure, well, sometimes people do, and I don't know how they got it published, but
and it shows.
Yeah, and it shows. It's funny, one of my old managers at Procter & Gamble, it's his birthday today, in fact, and he had this pretty sexy job in purchasing, and at the time I was in purchasing before I moved into marketing. And it was buying print, and you got to go to New York and meet all the print magazines and, Beauty Care and all these other things. And I was like, how did you get that job? Because, well, I've been in purchasing for a long time, because the job, 3 positions ago, I was dealing with the truck drivers in Nebraska, in February. And he goes, I loved it, though. And he's an everyday kind of guy, just everybody loves him still. And he's like, look, I just like buying things. I like the procurement strategy and the sourcing strategy. And he goes, I just enjoyed that, and I enjoy this. And he goes, there could be nothing more different from truck drivers in Nebraska to, they were probably 40-something years old in the middle of the country, and then these were 25-year-old women who were working these, kind of high-end jobs in New York City. And he goes, and he loved both of them equally. Now, it's like, it took me a while to get that. I'm like, really? But then after I started doing some more and more assignments, I was like, yeah, I could see that actually. I really enjoyed what people thought was mundane. I found it very fascinating.
Exactly.
Going to these small towns.
And that's so key in life, right? Finding something that you enjoy and also gives you, if you feel something rewarding after the end of the day.
Absolutely. That's so funny. So I actually also volunteered at the tennis tournament in Cincinnati, and it's one of the biggest ones in the world. And I got to work in the media box above. So when you were talking about the scoreboard, I was thinking about that. I was like, gosh, I had the best seat in the house. And I remember, saying to my boss, Greg Sharko, Pete Sampras, I think, had gotten broken twice by Patrick Rafter in a set. And I go, that's so crazy, he got broken twice his set. He's been broken twice all week. And he goes, great nugget. He calls ESPN, and 30 seconds later, it's on the crawl.
Oh, there you go.
And it was just this charge, this feeling like, my gosh, otherwise I'd be on the couch at home, and I would have said that to my brother, big deal. But because I was sitting in the right spot, everybody got access to this insight.
Yes.
So when you're breaking news, whether it's on Twitter or you're live, is there a rush? I would imagine there would have to be.
I mean, there's a really great feeling when you have a key piece of information that drives the entire news cycle, especially if you're the only one that has it, and then everyone is talking about it, and your competitors are all chasing it to confirm that, because and that helps, and then all of a sudden people rush to confirm it. They do. They credit your reporting. It's a great feeling. It's really, that's what really keeps you going. It's not just the competitiveness of it, which is, I'm a competitive person. It drives a lot, and it helps you stay motivated, because nobody likes to get beat. But it's the actual learning it and then conveying it to someone for the first time, and they're like, "Oh, that's interesting." And that helps shape your understanding. The way you present the news will help ultimately, become a new part of the fact base of that
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so well said.
Oh,
Thank you, Archana. What's been the, come back, reset here. What's been the toughest assignment you've had? I mean, obviously we talked about January 6th being a tough day, but is the current one you have now, is it, challenging, I guess, in a way?
I mean, covering Capitol Hill is completely chaotic, and it's fun, but it's chaotic. It's, in my view, is the best beat in Washington because there's so much, happening, and you can go up and interview members of Congress. I can go up to Nancy Pelosi, ask her a question in the hallway. I can ask it to any senator as well, and they don't have to answer my question, but I can ask them. So it gives you a lot of liberty as a reporter. Unlike the White House, you can't just go up to the president of the White House and ask him a question. Yeah. You have to, but in the halls of the Capitol, you can do that, and that gives
the people's branch.
Exactly. So, but that makes it chaotic too because you only have small windows to grab people in key times. So there's a lot of waiting around, staking things out, waiting for people to emerge, and then asking the key question and hope that you're the only one asking the key question at that moment, or only one getting that member to give you the information. So those are all requires lots of planning, a lot of strategy, a lot of stamina. And the House and the Senate, there's so much going on at any given moment that just requires a lot of running around. Now that being said, the hardest assignment was the first Trump impeachment because there was this long investigation behind closed doors about what Trump did, and of course the accusation was that he withheld the aid to Ukraine in an effort to pressure them to announce an investigation into Hunter Biden. That was a long investigation, all behind closed doors in this big, underground facility in the basement of the Capitol. And I basically had to wait outside all those days and days and days of witness interviews behind closed doors, wait for someone to come out, try to find them to tell me what's going on. No one wanted to talk about it because it's all private, but there was such high interest in everything that was happening because the president was facing impeachment, which would only been, at that point, would have been only the third time in American history. So a big deal. So
who knew the fourth time was going to come so quickly after?
Yeah, exactly. So I was spent just days and days and days just waiting for hours and hours for like something to emerge, something to happen. Then you find a piece of information, then you have to confirm it, make sure it's right, then go up on air on it, and also think about it. I'm not the only one doing this. Every news organization has many reporters all trying to do the same thing as I am. So it was just a highly, highly tense environment to try to report the most important story in the country at that time. So
how does your family deal with this? How do you strike a balance with your wife and kids? I mean, you have to be there, I guess, late or early or whatever else. I mean, that seems like that would be really, really hard.
Yeah, I think it's not. As someone is smiling in the corner over there, you have.
I almost looked over her way and I was like, man to man, maybe I just keep it here. I don't, my wife would be to say, oh, you mean hanging out at the comedy club waiting to go up? Yeah, it's like.
I mean, look, you have to have a very supporting supportive spouse, which I thankfully do.
Because she has a big job herself.
She has a big job. She's busy and she's traveling. She has big meetings. She has a lot of stuff to worry about in addition to dealing with the kids as well. I try to come home every night before kids' bedtime, so at least I see the kids before they go to sleep.
Right.
I try to be there in the morning to help them get to school, take them to school in the morning. So I try to at least see them in the morning and night. I try to keep my weekends mostly free from work, so I can do that. So that's despite how intense it can be, I try to savor those moments because that's better than being gone completely.
Yeah, and being just totally checked out.
Yeah.
When you have to try to find a source or get information or get the scoop, whatever, obviously without revealing your names of your sources, where do you get the really? Is it the actual sitting member in the House or the senator?
Yeah,
or
I mean,
is it their staff or something?
Yeah, I mean, look, my sources come from all different stripes. I have sources, lots of sources who are members of Congress, lots of sources who are aides to members of Congress, lots of sources who are operatives on the campaign trail, others who are, work downtown on K Street and other lobbyists, other people who are government officials in various agencies. So it takes a long time to build that up. Because when I first come, you don't have sources, right? It takes time to get sources. So like it takes, but it's a trusting relationship too.
Sure.
It's like, my job is to not surprise people when I'm reporting a story. So if I'm writing a bad story about a source that I've been dealing with, or about his or her boss, I have to be honest with them and tell them exactly what I'm going to report before I do, and then give that person an opportunity to weigh in, give their feedback, give their comment.
I mean, that's the ethics of journalism.
Yeah, you don't want to surprise people. The worst thing about being, I tell this to young reporters all the time, don't surprise people. Be honest about what you're going to write beforehand so they know what you're going to report, and give them an opportunity to weigh in and then reflect their comment accordingly. That's the best you can do. And now people aren't always going to be happy. People are still going to be angry at you. That's the nature of the business, but be upfront.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing, and that helps develop sources in the long run.
Sure.
People who have not been happy with the story, but they said, okay, well, at least he treated me fairly. So that's my hope.
Fair, absolutely. And I've always wondered this, just in journalism. I'm sure I could ask someone else too, but just, again, someone of your stature. Of course, it would be a terrible ethical breach, but if you interviewed somebody on background and you were not supposed to use their name, but you did anyway, what would happen?
Well, that person feels burnt.
Do people do that?
Maybe. I think I've seen some instances of someone saying, I thought this was on background, and they thought it was on the record, and there may have been a disagreement. Thankfully, that has not been my experience.
Right.
When background is, and someone anonymously telling you information, and you have to agree on the attribution you are to give that person. Okay. A person familiar with, or
and you say they clear that with you before they tell you what it is.
You usually work that out. So like, hey, can I talk? I'm going to talk to you on background. Okay, can I source this from a Republican aide? Right. Or a close to the situation, a Democratic aide or whatever. And sometimes they want more anonymity because they don't want that piece of information to get traced back to. Our job is not to just automatically do everything like that, because sometimes people will tell you something that is not worth the anonymity, because they can say it on the record. It's a partisan
Try to get them to say it on the record.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's always the goal. Yeah. But sometimes it's like really important information that they don't want to. They don't get in trouble if they tell you, because their name's on it, they're going to get in trouble. But so there's enough people who may know about it that they have some level of deniability.
How often are there actually leaks versus that was the strategy, was to tease it out to the public and then see? Do these leaks really actually happen?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's not a strategic move on their part.
Well, give you an example of a leak that I got about the first Trump impeachment, which was one of the which is a key moment. I told you about when you get a new piece of information, how important that is. Right. There was this moment where this big witness was going behind closed doors because he had heard Trump say something on speakerphone to the former ambassador to the European Union, talking about this effort to pressure Ukraine to announce an investigation into the Bidens. And I got the closed door testimony of what this person said and all the details about what Trump said in that phone call, which everybody wanted to know. So obviously it was a leak. I would never reveal who the source was, but that information was key and helped drive the whole discussion and understanding of what was happening behind closed doors. So that's that's an example of a combination of source building, reporting, being strategic, and also getting something new.
Yeah. I often hear that these congressional sessions are a lot more productive when they are behind closed doors and they're mugging for the camera and talking to the voters when it's open. I assume there is a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Why not more? Are they really a lot more civil and it's a lot more productive?
Yeah, it can be. I think that's what a lot of the negotiations, for the infrastructure law that went into effect last year, they spent weeks and weeks behind closed doors negotiating, and then they presented the bill, and the bill became law. Now, there's also the argument that things need to be transparent because these are laws that affect people's lives.
Sure.
So you have to deal with both. And in that case, they did everything behind closed doors, and they jammed it through the Senate, just in a matter of days without any real public scrutiny of what was in the bill. But it probably wouldn't have become law if they did it all out in public, because they'll all be positioning and jockeying for the cameras and such. So, yeah,
and they're worried about being primary from the left and the right.
Exactly. So it's a complicated. I, as a journalist, don't like secrecy. I don't like things behind closed doors. I want things in the public and us to see it. But there's a value to doing things privately, but sometimes members take it to an extreme.
What do you think of these independent journalists on Substack, or some of them are coming from Rolling Stone, like Matt Taibbi, Jimmy Dore, Russell Brand, and Glenn Greenwald, and all these fools? What do you think of them? I mean, like, they claim that they're the ones giving you the straight dope. Are you like, yeah, there's some truth to that, or you're like,
I don't really follow them, to tell you the truth.
You don't?
No. I mean, I have enough to read.
Yeah, just
enough to keep up with. If there's something that catches my attention, I may see it, but I don't actively seek out those journalists. I'm not saying anything wrong with what they're doing. It's totally fine with what they're doing, but if it catches my attention, I'll notice it, but it's not my primary source of information.
Sure. Any podcasts?
I don't really have time for podcasts. I'll do it when I can, I guess. But
in your spare time.
In my spare time.
In all the spare time. Because
I really when I'm driving to work, I'm usually on the phone both ways, either talking to sources or catching up on stuff or listening to morning conference calls and things. So I don't really listen to stuff in the car. And then when I'm at work, it's we're on the run. So there's not a whole lot of time.
What do you do to relax? Is it movies or music or TV or sports? You mentioned.
I play golf.
You do play golf. Okay.
Yeah, I listen to. I watch a lot of sports.
Yeah.
My kids are into sports. My wife is into sports.
Oh, that's good.
So we're all big sports fans.
That helps.
And then we do a lot of fun activities we do a lot of we take fun vacations.
Yeah.
We went to Peru this past summer.
Wow.
We do. I think we try to enjoy life. I really do think we try to.
Absolutely.
So work hard, play hard. That's sort of my motto.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, some people have work hard, and some people say, rest easy, or they take it easy when they can, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, I know there's other. I like sitting on a beach too. There's nothing wrong with sitting
there's
on
nothing
a beach.
wrong with that. What would it mean to pull a Manu if someone's like, oh, he just pulled a Manu? What would that be?
Just show up at your office with a camera on your face, perhaps.
Yeah.
You don't want me outside your office with a camera on your face, most of the time.
Sure.
The ones who want to talk I think you're better off as a person, as a politician, talking to me than not talking to me. There's something, when you hide, it makes you look more culpable than you might be.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be something like pull a cicada off my lapel or something.
Oh, right.
I thought that's
every 17 years.
Yeah, that's right.
So maybe two other questions. One is coolest person or position that you've interviewed, thank you, and or met. Okay, let's just say interviewed on the record, and then someone that you've just met. It could be in politics or elsewhere. You're like, wow, that was a big name. I mean, the president.
I don't view politicians as cool, so
yeah,
that's kind of a hard answer.
That's why I stepped back from name and I said maybe more position. I don't know exactly.
I mean, look, I've interviewed speakers of the House and future presidents. I've asked questions to current presidents. So I've senators, House members, you name it.
Yeah.
I've had some consequential interviews, tense interviews, including with Nancy Pelosi.
I've seen those.
John McCain was a really person that I enjoyed interviewing. He had, he would not be afraid of your question. He would ask you. He'd be tough on his response to you sometimes. He was so pissed at me at some story I did.
Yeah.
And he kind of froze me out for 2 years. Would not talk to me. But then he came back around and he talked to me a ton, and we had a very positive relationship.
That's cool.
Infamously gave me bunny ears on live TV.
Yeah.
Actually, it was the devil horns right behind me on live TV.
That's
which was
hilarious.
fun. So, they're just, you come across some really interesting, consequential figures, which is fun.
Which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Have you made it?
Not yet. I think that if I feel like I have made it, then I will start to get complacent. I feel like and that's part of my competitive edge.
Yeah.
That's part of what drives me. I still I work super hard in my job to be as successful as I can be every single day. Try not to leave anything on the table.
Yeah.
I maximize my time when I'm working. I try not to slack off. And what does that mean? What comes next?
Yeah.
Who knows? But it's.
What would be the goal though? Like where you kind of go.
I'm sort of. I take opportunities that come as they may. So.
And would you like to be an anchor?
I've guest anchored for various shows. It's a fun thing to do. But we'll see what positions ever open their doors down in the future. So, I like what I'm doing right now. Does that mean that I can do it forever? I don't know. I mean, as I mentioned, it's a
grueling job.
It's a grueling job, and I'm not a young man anymore.
Sure.
And I walk sometimes 7-8 miles a day in the suit, sometimes outside in the heat, chasing people down.
Days. The frozen fusion days.
Oh yeah. So can I handle it for much longer?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Hey man, it's been a pleasure. Honestly, you've been an inspiration to so many in the South Asian community, Desi community, and beyond. You're great at your job. And I was super excited that you remembered to ping me and say, hey, I will be in LA. And that really made my day that day. I went and told Hersha. My parents are just blown away by this because they watch you every day. And as do we. Still watch CNN quite a bit. So
that's
really,
great.
Really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. So
anything else you want to say, you're welcome to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I enjoyed it. The only thing is, we sort of come from a family of writers. And one thing I was going to mention too is that my grandfather was a writer, a famous writer in Kannada language.
I read about that.
Gopala Krishna Aduga. He wrote. He was a very famous poet. So a lot of my, he's an inspiration to me in a young age. He passed away, in '92. So a while ago. But still, his works are still studied, these days in school in Kannada. So it's
that's amazing.
So it's we do have a lot of doctors, engineers in my family. There's nothing wrong with my dad's a doctor. But we've also people doing different fields.
Yeah, and you come from a tradition of that.
Yeah.
Manu, where can people find you? Twitter
at MKRaju. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, sure.
All
the above.
All the media.
But I'm not on TikTok, so maybe
not yet. Your kid. Who'll get on first? You or your kids? That's what we got to figure out.
Probably my kids.
Probably your kids. Thank you, Manu Raju, the chief congressional correspondent for CNN. We had a great time playing ping pong on both tables here, hanging out here as well as in the booth. Thank you for joining us on What Do You Bring to the Table? I've been your host, Rajiv, and I still am.
All right, thanks.
Cool.
Man. That was